Lisa Rachelson, and today my team and I will be discussing our progress on our senior project application, HealthyGatorSportsFan. To recap, the main goal of our project is to develop what is called a just-in-time adaptive intervention application, which is basically an application that uses real-time notifications to modify user behaviors in order to address the link between sports viewership and unhealthy eating and activity habits through notifications that are based on live game statistics. With that said, I will hand it over to Shannon with our project demo.
We made a lot of good progress on both the front end and the back end implementation. We've implemented the account creation, login, basic info entry, and goal setting screens, as well as a proof of concept notification. We've started the work to tie this to the college football API that will trigger these notifications, and we've set up our databases in Postgres and our Django server to run our project from the back end. When you enter the application, you'll have the option to create an account or log in. Let's assume you're a new user and you need to create an account. You'll be greeted with a welcome screen and be prompted to enter a username and password. For the purposes of this demo, I'll use demo user as my username, and we'll test out the password validation options that we have. If we try to just use ABC as our password and create the account, we'll get a warning that it's not long enough, must be 8 characters or more. So if we try adding on EFGHIJ, then we'll get an issue that we need a numeric character in the password. Now let's say we add 1 at the end of the first password, but not the second. We try to create the account, you'll see passwords don't match. Finally, we get past the restrictive password validation to create our account. Next, we'll need to enter some basic information on this data collection screen. This would be used later in the application. So you'll select your gender, your height and feet, height in inches if there's any more than the height in feet, and your weight. Once you enter these values, then you can set your goals. If your goal of using this application is to feel better, you'd select it as such. And for the purposes of this demo, I'll say my goal is also to lose weight. Maybe I want to lose 5 pounds. So you'll enter the values as such and continue. At this point, you've created your account and you're brought to a placeholder home screen that's still under development. We've connected the username and password experience to the backend, and we still have to do the same for the basic info and the goal collection process. You'll see at the top right of the screen, there's a bell for notifications. If we click on that, it brings us to our notification management page. This page is still under construction, but we do have a proof of concept notification option. If I pull my notification bar down, you'll see I only have the recording notification here. Now, if I press to send a notification, the button will tell me this test notification, hello, you got a notification, should have been sent to my mobile app, to my mobile device. If I drag the notification bar down again, you'll see the notification appears. From the File Explorer in VS Code, you can see that our repo is split between our Django backend server and our React Native folder that hosts our front end. Right now, I have 2 terminals open, one which is hosting the front end and running it on Expo Go, where you scan this QR code on your mobile app to run the application in development. And I have another terminal here where I'm running the Django server to power the backend. On the front end, if I scroll down to the latest entries, you'll see some logs corresponding to the demo that was just seen. Now, if we go to our Django admin server, you'll see all of our databases easily viewable. So notification data, user data, and users, and recent operations that have happened. You'll see we've come in and deleted some test users over and over again, trying to get the flow correct. If I go into the user database, you can manually modify from this view. This is the demo user that I had created in the front end demo. And some of this information was just populated with default values. You have the option here to save, delete, and so on. And the same goes for the other data types. If we look at the Django localhost server, not the admin view, this shows all of the entries in the tables thus far. So you'll see all of the fields that were not modifiable from the other view. We have built this on Postgres. And this will eventually all be hosted on Heroku so that we don't have to have servers running on our own terminal windows. Finally, we've identified all notification scenarios that we will need to trigger off of, and we've developed the content for each of those scenarios. At this point, I'll hand it over to Amy to talk about next steps.
So I'll talk about our planned features. Some of our planned features include things such as UI improvements, where we're going to refine the overall look and feel, optimize spacing, and streamline the current weight entry. Next is backend connectivity. We will link the login experience to the backend and complete the remaining APIs. Then we have user data management, where we will track progress and manage notifications, adding bulk update and delete for the notifications. Another planned feature is homepage insights, where we will display user progress with interactive charts. And finally, user controls. We will add a logout function and implement push notifications based on live game data with polling.
So I can go ahead and talk about our test plan for the app. So far we've been primarily manually testing, both with our IDE debuggers and with print debugging, but we do have a number of test plans, such as using type checking, using unit tests, integration tests, component tests, and end-to-end testing, making sure our whole system is functional. We're going to be doing that with a variety of methods, such as using Postman for API calls, hard coding notifications on the front end, and using the tool on Expo's website to test as well. We're going to be using PyTest for our backend. And then additionally for our front end, we'll be using Jest and or React Native test library. We're also going to be mocking the game scoreboard feature, which is how we get our live scores to test when we don't have a live game currently occurring. We're also going to be using error handling throughout our time. Our test cases are still in development, but as we see on the next slide, we have begun to fill out our template for that. And as soon as that is complete and we've got comprehensive testing across the board, we can go ahead and start coding those.
Now I'll talk about some of our issues and strategies. One issue we have is with platform incompatibilities, where React Native differs on Android versus iPhone. To mitigate this, each OS has a dedicated tester. Another issue we have is with dynamic image sourcing. React Native doesn't support dynamic image loading. We're developing a workaround to display content like the images of weekly opponents. And finally, we have an email uniqueness constraint, where the default model value for email conflicts with the uniqueness rules in the model. We have a temporary workaround, and we plan to use username for the email in the future. And for the individual responsibilities, I first set up our SQL database and Django admin webpage as seen in the demo. After setting up the Django models, we were able to insert data into the tables through the admin page and then see the results for testing. My next step was to make an initial connection between our front end and back end. First, I tested the back end API with Postman to make sure that the back end was set up correctly before I attempted to connect our front end. After that was successful, I set up the front end fetch API to connect with the back end. This was tested with Expo Go through the user account creation screen for username and password. We were able to confirm that this was successful through the Django admin page I mentioned earlier. My work in progress is to complete the endpoints for the remaining user inputs, and my future work will involve transitioning from local hosting to Heroku.
So for my progress this unit, I completed the front-end development of the account creation, login, and goal setup pipelines, as well as worked on my assigned sections of the manuscript. For my in-progress tasks, I have been working on developing the home screen, which will chart user progress and contain the bulk of the application itself. I am also working on getting data to persist between screens in order to minimize the number of connections needed with the backend, and I'm adding a few additional data fields to the initial setup screens, such as name, email, and birth date. Once those are completed, I'm going to further optimize the function and design of our front end, as well as create the profile management and logout screens, as well as doing further testing in general.
On my side, I have facilitated the meetings with our faculty advisor on a weekly basis. I also developed the proof of concept push notification on the front end and have been working with Isaac to connect that to the backend API. I'm going to continue work on notification management in general, so users can interact with the notifications they've been sent, and then continue to work on the end-to-end user experience.
As for me, I've been researching the college football API and set up our connection on the back end with that. And I've also created functionality to send notifications from the back end to the front end, our front-facing app. I'm currently in the process of looking for our game logic where we will need to send notification, making sure we have the code to test all of those scenarios. And in the future, I'm planning to use Celery or something similar to poll the college football API regularly to check for scoring updates. I'm also going to be connecting the notifications we have with information about the users in the database to further that. Thank you so much for watching.